know what I'm going to see. Yet I must.
Not just for food, but for hope. And yet, somehow, she carried a spark, a quiet kind of magnetism that even Hollywood couldn't fully predict. When Paramount first tested her, they called her unmarketable but magnetic. Half right, I'd say. She wasn't the cookie-cutter starlet they expected, but man, she had something raw, something real, that people couldn't turn away from. Then came Roman Holiday in 1953, the movie that flipped her life overnight. Suddenly, she was a household name. But here's the thing. Her friends remembered her for the letters she sent her mother, not the red carpet or the cameras. "I won't forget the hungry children while I'm feasting on dreams," she wrote. That line tells you everything. Audrey had fame, glamour, and all the perks most people would kill for, but she never let it blind her to the suffering she'd seen, the hardships that shaped her. That's a kind of grace you can't learn in acting school. That's lived experience making you luminous. By the time she hit her 40s, most stars are doing interviews about their next big project or whatever trend is hot. Audrey? She traded the sound stages and spotlights for dusty roads in Sudan and Somalia. Cameras followed her, of course, reporters expecting a Hollywood story. What they found was someone who served, not performed. She spoke about child malnutrition in a voice that wasn't preachy or performative. It was soft, human, real, and people watched. They cried, not because she was sad or dramatic, but because they felt her sincerity. That's rare. That's Audrey. She took all the elegance and fame and wrapped it around purpose. And even now, years after she's gone, she keeps doing that thing she did best. Inspiring people to care, to be gentle, to notice each other. Every anniversary of her passing, people go online, searching for quotes about kindness, empathy, humanity. Young viewers who weren't even alive when she died write things like, "She makes me want to be gentler." Isn't that wild? That's how far a life can reach when it's lived with integrity. In a world full of hot takes, viral rants, and performative outrage, Audrey's voice whispers calm and clarity. That whisper still echoes. Modern celebrities look to her, too. Emma Watson talks about her as proof that feminine doesn't mean fragile. Taylor Swift points to her as a model of grace, resilience, and quiet strength. And honestly, I let fame define her. She survived war, hunger, and fear, became one of the world's most iconic actresses, and then spent her later years giving everything she could to children who had even less than she once did. That's not just star power. That's humanity. That's a life that still teaches us something even 60 years later. Even as a child, Audrey had this way of seeing people that made you feel like you mattered. You know, the kind of attention that doesn't need words, just presence. Growing up during World War II, she saw hunger, fear, and loss firsthand. Families disappearing, cities burning, friends suffering. She was still small, still learning to read and write, still trying to make sense of a world gone sideways, but somehow, in the cracks of chaos, she learned empathy. Not the kind of empathy you study in a book, but the kind that comes from watching someone's stomach go empty and feeling it in your own chest. That, I think, is the seed that eventually grew into everything Audrey became. The actress, the star, the humanitarian, the quiet hero. When she got to Hollywood, she didn't just walk onto sets. She walked into a world that wanted to put her in a box. Everyone assumed she'd be delicate, fragile, a porcelain doll you could admire from a distance. And sure, she was delicate looking. But anyone who thinks Audrey was fragile has clearly never watched her work, never seen the intensity in her eyes, the energy in her movements, the way she commanded a scene without yelling or throwing herself around. That first test at Paramount, where they called her unmarketable but magnetic, classic Hollywood misread. She didn't fit their mold. She didn't need to. She had something even better, authenticity. You can't fake that kind of magnetic pull. It's either there or it's not. And for Audrey, it burned brighter than any spotlight. Roman Holiday was the moment the world noticed. One day, she was unknown. The next, she was everywhere. People memorized her face, her walk, her laugh. But the funny thing about Audrey is, she never let herself get carried away with the fuss. She laughed at it sometimes, sure, but she also remembered the children she saw starving during the war. She never forgot the hunger she'd once known. Fame was exciting, but it wasn't the point. She was living in two worlds at once. The dazzling world of cinema and the sobering, urgent world outside the studio gates. That tension, that duality, gave her performances this haunting depth. You could see the kindness in her eyes even as she flirted or danced across a scene. You could feel the history she carried without her saying a word. And then, there's her work with UNICEF. This is where she became something extraordinary. Most people in Hollywood were settled comfortably into a life of glamour, endorsements, parties, and award shows. Not Audrey. By the time she hit her 40s, she chose a different path entirely. She chose service. She took her fame and used it as a megaphone for the voiceless. She traveled to countries most people never think about. Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, places where hope was hard to find, and hunger was an everyday enemy. She didn't just visit for cameras. She wasn't doing it to be seen. She was doing it because she had been there in spirit, in experience, in memory, and she couldn't sit by. And the way she moved through those places, softly but fully present, it's hard to describe. Imagine a room full of suffering and chaos, and there's this woman kneeling down, speaking gently, listening intently, holding a child's hand without a trace of performance. That's Audrey. The cameras followed naturally, but what they captured was honesty. People watching the news didn't cry because they were told to. They cried because they felt her sincerity. That's the power of someone who lives their truth. That's why, even now, decades later, we still remember her not just for the dresses or the movies, but for the way she made us feel. And speaking of feeling, let's pause here for a second. I want you to really think about what it's like to see someone use their gifts to lift others instead of themselves. Most of us spend our lives chasing recognition, applause, little moments of validation. Audrey, in her quiet, understated way, reminds us that it's the opposite. She didn't need the world to call her beautiful. She didn't need to be the most famous. She just needed to care, and the world noticed anyway. That's something worth holding on to. That's why her quotes, her interviews, her letters, they keep surfacing. People who never saw breakfast at Tiffany's still stumble upon her wisdom online and leave comments like, "She makes me want to be gentler." It's not nostalgia. It's a ripple effect of someone living intentionally. Now, here's a fun little thing. Audrey also had this dry sense of humor that doesn't always get highlighted. She could make a joke in the middle of a high-pressure shoot or tease a co-star in a way that made everyone laugh without anyone feeling small. And maybe that's why she was magnetic. Not just because of beauty or elegance or talent, but because she had humanity and humor and imperfection. She stumbled, she worried, she wondered if she was enough, but she kept showing up anyway. And in a way, that's the lesson here. Elegance isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up with your heart open even when the world is messy. Even modern stars can't get enough of her influence. Emma Watson talks about her as an example of a woman whose femininity doesn't equal weakness. Taylor Swift cites her as proof that grace, strength, and authenticity can coexist beautifully. That's the Audrey effect. She's a bridge between generations, a model not just for women, not just for artists, but for anyone who wants to live a life that matters. And thanks to the internet, people are still discovering her, still learning from her, still inspired to be kinder and gentler. That influence doesn't fade, it multiplies. If this video brought you something useful or just made your day a bit brighter, drop a like, subscribe, or share it forward. That simple gesture keeps the whole thing moving. Her beauty wasn't just something to look at, it was something you felt. It was in the gentleness she chose every day, the way she showed up for people, the way she persisted in kindness even when it was hard. She lived through war, hunger, fear, and tragedy. She became one of the world's most recognized actresses. She walked red carpets, smiled for millions, and then turned around and spent years giving everything she could to children who had nothing. That's a kind of courage that doesn't always get trophies or headlines, but it leaves something far more lasting. Inspiration. Audrey's story is like a quiet whisper that insists you notice what really matters. It's a reminder that real influence isn't about likes, followers, or even fame. It's about the lives you touch, the hearts you move, the small choices that ripple outward in ways you can't always see. And maybe in our own lives, that's the challenge. How do we show up with the same honesty, courage, and softness that she did? How do we let our own little acts of kindness echo beyond our own time? So here's the closing thought. When was the last time someone's small act of kindness really hit you in the chest? When was the last time you felt that ripple from someone else and let it change the way you move through your day? And maybe more importantly, how can you let your own light, even the tiniest part of it, shine outward in a way that matters? Because that's what Audrey did. She didn't need to prove herself. She didn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. She just showed up. She persisted. She cared. And 60 years later, we're still talking about her. We're still learning from her. We're still trying, in our small ways, to live like she did. That's the power of a life lived with intention. That's the dared to be ordinary sometimes and still somehow make an extraordinary impact. Her legacy isn't in the movies alone, though those remain timeless. It's in the gestures, the letters, the little moments that got captured on film or in photographs. The shy smile for a child, the soft word to a volunteer, the genuine laugh with a friend. That's why people still feel a pang of something when they see her. It's not nostalgia. It's recognition. It's remembering that someone, somewhere, chose to live with empathy when they could have chosen anything else. And maybe that's the thing about Audrey. She didn't make her life complicated. She didn't overthink it. She just showed up fully and honestly, and the world felt the difference. Her influence is everywhere, even now. Every time a celebrity cites her as an inspiration, every time a fan posts a quote online, every time someone watches Breakfast at Tiffany's or Roman Holiday and laughs or cries along with her, Audrey's spirit stretches just a little further. She reminds us that influence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, persistent, gentle, and that's exactly why it lasts. That's why people born decades after her passing still feel inspired by her. That's why she continues to break hearts, not in a tragic sense, but in a soft, unignorable way. And honestly, we could all use a little of that today. A little gentleness, a little sincerity, a little courage to care about someone else, even when it's inconvenient. Audrey lived in a world of spectacle and frenzy, but she chose calm. She chose listening. She chose service. And her life reminds us that choosing the right thing doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be consistent. It has to be real. So as you think about her story, think about your own small actions, the choices you make, the way you treat people, the little ripples you send into the world. Because, in a way, we're all part of the same story. We're all part of the ongoing ripple of kindness and courage that Audrey exemplified. And if even one person reads this, watches this video, or just remembers her a little differently today, and decides to act with a bit more compassion, that's her story continuing. That's her legacy. That's her life still breaking hearts, still inspiring, still teaching us how to live better. So I'll leave you with this. What's one way you can bring a little more Audrey into your day? One small gesture, one kind word, one moment of real presence. And the second question, maybe the most important one, who in your life could use that ripple from you right now? Think about it. Share it. Connect. Because that's exactly how her story lives on, not just in memory, but in action.